It's time to get sexy on Secular Sexuality.
Hello and welcome to Secular Sexuality. I am Megan Bonner. Joining me as always is Christy Powell.
Howdy.
And joining us again, thank you so much, is Serafina Smith.
Thank you.
And today we are mixing it up a little bit. We have viewer mail. So yay! We are going to read through a few of the emails that we have received. We love hearing from you guys. If you ever want to send an email into us, that is sex@atheist-community.org. We also would love to hear from you via phone if you have one of those newfangled inventions. By calling us at 512-686, thank you, 0279.
I'm glad you guys know that number because I do not.
And let's see here. On the community corkboard, we have the absolutely wonderful magazine.
Glossy print.
Oh, and just, I cannot do a good job of...
Ooh. Megan, your picture in here, I love it.
Oh, I know. It's a nice spread, huh? And we will be mailing these out to... Oh, up on the screen is a better picture of the magazine. And we are mailing them out to the members. And I think there is, if you would like a copy, you can go on to the ACA's Facebook page and sign up for the magazine. So with that, let's get into wishing everyone a happy holidays. I think Christmas is, well, upon us.
It's tricky. And the three of us actually took some time a couple of weeks ago to talk about, everything that kind of goes into that for folks in the atheist community and the Atheist Community of Austin in particular. But yeah, it is still a really special time of the year, and we always want people to take the opportunity to enjoy that.
And so, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and any other best wishes for this time of year.
Hanukkah's already passed us, but Kwanzaa, happy Kwanzaa.
And we will be seeing y'all before the new year. We're here next Thursday, and we'd love to see you then.
Alrighty. So, Christy, I hear we had some mail from viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. We got some really great questions, and we always do, and usually we email back to those, and so we'd love to encourage people to continue to write in, but some of these were juicy enough to, I think, really spend some time talking about, maybe more than one person with a keyboard could properly tackle.
Right.
So I'm glad that we're getting to take some time to really dive into these kinds of things.
Oh, yeah, and I am so happy that we are actually finally starting to get some, we do get the occasional email, but this week we actually got enough to be able to go, hey, I think there's something here. We can do an entire episode around these.
Yeah, some beautiful stuff. So we did excerpt a few of these. So just for everybody's privacy and for the ease of the viewer. So I want to be clear that this isn't, us reading off verbatim, but I'd love to go ahead and share that first one with y'all if I could.
Oh yeah.
This struck to my heart because I remember being a lonely, horny college student.
Oh.
So what we got here was, hi there. I'm a male, and I find myself in an almost constant situation where my contact with women is limited. I'm still in school, and my program is 95% male. I studied counseling, where it was like the exact opposite program. It was kind of nice. My program also means that I spend long hours with little time to go out. I find that I do find an emptiness in having a lack of partner for so long. I must admit that technically I am still a virgin. Those quotes are in the original, to be clear.
Okay.
I have resorted to porn for a long while now for some type of release, but lately I find that I do long for contact with another human being. I have little interest in flings and would like to have a relationship. However, at this point, it has been so long since I've had a romantic prospect that I've pretty much lost all hope. And nope, no luck with Tinder, OkCupid, etc. I'm told I'm fairly attractive. I have many friends that I get along with easily. I just never seem to be able in a position that a short or a long-term relationship seems feasible. But like I said, I do find a certain emptiness with this lack and find I'm unable to fill it through other means, porn, etc. I find this is affecting my confidence and drive in life in general lately, despite having some professional and personal success. Any response is appreciated.
Well, I feel wholly underqualified to answer this one, seeing as I am not a male in college lacking for sex life.
I don't think any of us are, but we can.
Yeah, what was that college sex life like? Was it
For me,
all unicorns and rainbows and
it was non-existent.
non-existent? Yeah. Yeah. Same. You know, we all have these pictures of like Van Wilder and like these crazy sex orgies.
Yeah, it's
and
so not like
you know,
that.
there's just these like drunken Tara Reeds throwing themselves on us all the time. At least that's the way the movies make it seem. But I relate. I mean, college was a time for me where the workload was incredible, where it was just exhausting, and it was really hard to have that connection, to have that opportunity to feel close to people.
Yeah, I dated one classmate once, and that was it.
Yeah. So I think I would say first and foremost that that's a very human experience. It's a very natural one, and I know that at this stage of life, that 3-4 years, maybe going back to high school, maybe going back to undergraduate or before now, and it can seem like this is just going to be what adulthood is like. And in some ways, they're not wrong. You know, Sarah, you pointed out that a lot of finding a relationship or sexual opportunities is about presence and patience.
Yeah.
I think that's an incredible point.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be there. You have to be available in a situation where you can have a relationship, right? And even when you are, even if you are, a dazzling, sparkling personality with great looks or whatever, it's going to take time.
I'd say, especially given the age you usually are when you're in college, even though it can be a wider range, age range, it still is not easy. And it's not the best time of most people's lives, to be completely honest.
You're full of stress all the time.
Yeah, and stress really kills the libido, especially for women. So if you're looking for women out there, then yeah.
Yeah, and just not being around women, and if that's who you're looking for,
Right.
it makes sense that that's going to be tricky. So, you mentioned you kind of wrote off dating apps and things like that. And I would say for a lot of folks, dating apps are just never going to be a good fit. I don't think that everybody needs to date that way. But we do see more and more that it's becoming the norm. Dating apps have largely surpassed, clubs, school, work, worship community, these different ways that people traditionally have been meeting. So I would say that maybe a dating app isn't right for you, but just because you're not getting a lot of great responses, especially as a guy, and we've talked about this a little bit before, the fact that guys tend to be doing a lot more of the legwork on dating apps in the sense that they're going to have to, strike up a conversation with 100 different folks before they really start to find that connection. And so it is tricky. It is draining. And maybe you're not in a place in your life right now where you feel like you're able to take that on. And I think that's very human. But I would say keep at it. know that there's time left. You know, you don't have to be married before graduation. I went to A&M, a very large conservative university here in Texas, where, I mean, you could tell by like junior, senior year, people were starting to get panicky. That if you didn't get engaged by the time you graduated, life was over for you. You could just go ahead and hang up your sexuality. You were going to just go ahead, get a cat, get a ferret, give up.
Old spinster.
Yeah, die alone. You know, that's pretty much the narrative.
No, I mean, that is a really good point that you're making. When you're in college, you're basically riding on the narrative that you've been given your whole life, that this is the time for creating your life. You know, you're doing what you are, quote unquote, supposed to be doing to create the life that you want. And so if part of that life is, you know, human connection with someone that you feel romantic about, and you can't get that, I can imagine that feels really, you know, disheartening.
Yeah, and I kind of want to respond to another one of those sort of myths that, you know, seems sort of implicit in all of this, which is this idea that you're technically still a virgin. And I can't imagine what that means for you personally. But I would also say that there is nothing magical about going from having not had sex to having had sex. I don't want to make it sound as if nobody's first time was good. There are plenty of people with beautiful stories, and it can be special, but
I haven't really heard them.
Yeah, it's for a lot of folks not, and that's totally okay too. But it doesn't need to seem as if because it hasn't happened that it's never going to happen.
And it doesn't need to define you as a person.
It can feel like an identity. I mean, in our culture, really construction is one. It tells you that there's something wrong with you, that if you've made it this far without ever having sex, that you never will.
Right. As a male.
Particularly
especially
as a male.
For men, and especially for younger men.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, for females, it's kind of the opposite. You are a slut, you're a whore, you're, you know, dirty, chewed up gum, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. I mean, those stories are an episode unto itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
But, you know, I think another important part is we're talking about loneliness, and it makes sense that you say you have good friends, you say that you're having some success scholastically, professionally, these different things. But I want to point out that getting away from loneliness, that finding love, finding human connection in these different ways is more than just a friendship that also includes orgasms. Right?
Yeah.
That human connection can include so many different things. And so whether it's joining us on a Thursday night and jumping into the chat room, thank y'all for being there, or whether it's joining a club, I mean, whatever it might look like for you, there is so much more to the human experience, so much more to not feeling lonely than, you know, having some cute young thing on your arm to go out with on Friday nights.
I mean, not that that's bad.
Not that there's anything wrong with it.
Right. No, I mean, if you're in a college town, which presumably you are if you're, you know, in college, then, you know, there's going to be clubs where you can meet people and hang out with them, other than your own, you know, circle of friends that are in your own graduate program or whatever. And, you know, there's chances of making deep connections with those people. So I would definitely say put yourself out there. Okay, it sounds so cliche when I say it, but really, if you don't put yourself out there, you're going to stay in the same bubble that you're currently in, and you're not having good luck with that bubble as far as
your email would suggest.
Yeah.
So I think we're all kind of saying, stick with it, stay patient, don't feel like there is a finish line or a rush to get there. And just know that it's hard for most everybody, and maybe right now it is particularly hard for you. Maybe you're seeing your friends just with tons of opportunities, but don't give up. Don't write off your Tinders and your OkCupids and your Sweet Peas and your on and on and on and on. You know, it may be exhausting to, you know, every 12 hours you're on the app, you're swiping, you're going. But you know, slow it down. Take some time with it and trust that it's going to happen for you.
Yeah, there's 7 billion people on the planet. Somebody will like you.
And I would also just add that there's nothing wrong with a fling. There's nothing wrong with finding a temporary outlet for that energy and those feelings.
I believe we call those fuck buddies.
Well, I mean, that could be it, but I think Megan also brings up a good point that so often we have this idealized version of romance in our minds that we let the great and the perfect and the majestic get in the way of the good. Mm-hmm. And so often, I mean, every great relationship I've ever been in has started out as good. Mm-hmm. You know, even the ones where that first date had like sort of that sizzle and you could tell that there was something happening. Even that's a crapshoot. Mm-hmm. You know, even that might lead to a terrible third date.
True fact.
And plenty of mediocre first dates turn into really meaningful things. So, you know, I would say, again, put yourself out there. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm your mom's probably been saying it.
We sound like parents. I am a parent, whatever.
But yeah, keep with it and just enjoy something for what it is. Not every first date needs to be the love of a lifetime.
Yeah, I would agree.
Take yourself out on some dates. That's something that I do when I'm single. Treat myself like I'm a partner and just take myself out. Do what I would do with a partner if I had one. And just treat myself. And it feels really good. It feels like you're building yourself up. And when you do that, you're also like affirming yourself and affirming the very qualities that someone who would fall for you are going to see. So, you know, bonus.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.
All right. You want to jump to the phone?
Yes, I was just about to say we actually have a caller. We do have lines open,
more lines
however.
open.
So please feel free to call in. Today we are not talking about any specific topics, so anything you have to talk to us about, feel free.
Bring it on.
That's 512-686-0279. I do not have it memorized yet, and yes, I have to look at the screen.
We need a label maker. Just put it along the top.
You know that is a really excellent idea. Let's get on that.
All right.
All right. So first up, we have Danny from Florida. Danny, you are on the air.
Hello.
Hello.
How can we help you, Danny?
All right. So how does this work? How exactly?
Why don't you just tell us what's on your mind? We'll go from there.
Yeah.
All right. So basically, first I want to say that I identify as trans non-binary. Mm-hmm. And as far as I like the idea of hearing multiple points of view. Mm-hmm. And as far as the trans exclusionary radical feminist perspective is concerned, to be completely transparent, there are aspects of it which I can relate to. Mm-hmm. That may be due to my religious upbringing, multiple factors. But as far as the trans political movement, mm-hmm. I find that there's often a lot of, there's obviously hate going both ways. And the problem that I have, I guess in my mind, is understanding. I apologize. I'm trying to figure out exactly how to word what I want to say.
Yeah.
But as far as there being a separation between transgender women and cis women, mm-hmm. In my mind, I do see a distinction between the two, not saying that we shouldn't allow trans women to identify as trans women, but trying to understand the nuances of the importance of trans women identifying as cisgendered women. I don't know that necessarily makes sense.
Maybe whether or not trans women are part of the Women's March. You know, whether trans women belong in the conversation about women's rights and pay equality and these different things. Does that sort of get at the heart of what you're looking at?
Kind of. Yeah, I mean, it's getting there. Not necessarily those specific topics, but just, you know, obviously everyone has equal voices, but when there
is this space for them
specifically, I'm sorry?
Is this particular space, whether we're talking about the Women's March or any other feminist movement, is there room for trans women in that space? And do they belong there, or do they have their own political activist organizations? These different things, are they welcome? Should they be welcomed into those types of like large-scale feminist movements?
Is that making
that's
sense?
That's kind of the question that we're poking around the edges of.
Kind of. Again, it's. I mean, obviously, I think they should, and I'm not. I guess maybe that's where the distinction lies: is that the TERF movement doesn't think that they should. I think it's more about issues that are specifically related to issues that most cisgendered women may deal with that trans women don't deal with.
Periods and such.
I was going to say most of that would just be the biological reproduction. Oh my goodness.
I mean, talk to any trans woman about hormonal shifts, and they're there. They get you.
Yeah.
Sure.
But
But we don't bleed.
I hear that. I mean, I remember when Caitlyn Jenner was named, I think, Woman of the Year by maybe Time or some other organization, and there was, a lot of pushback. I mean, a good friend of mine was really upset, and she kind of went on and on about how, this was somebody that didn't have the experience of growing up as a woman, is the way she described it. And so she didn't have all of that oppression and these different things. And I mean, we can talk about Caitlyn Jenner as somebody worthy of being the number one woman of any particular year. That's a separate conversation. But I could not appreciate where she was coming from. I mean, in her mind, women were finally starting to make ground. And it felt like it was splitting the party, or it was
being co-opted.
Yeah, being co-opted, or giving men a lot of the attention that women had finally started to garner. And I felt, and I feel, that was just a radical misconceptualization of what and who trans women are, which is, in the simplest terms, women.
I personally, is it okay if I and then go? And you look like you may have been ready to say something.
Please go on.
So I feel like trans women are still women, and their voices matter just as much as any cis woman.
Right.
Not only that, but even if they didn't necessarily have the same experiences as cis women growing up, it's not as if they turned 20, 25, whatever age they actively transitioned or came out as or what have you, that they started becoming women.
Well, and I'd like to state, too, that there are plenty of trans women who transitioned and got to experience society as a cis woman would and went, fuck this shit. So that's not to say that trans women do not experience the same, social hardships I think it's all a matter of perception and a matter of experience. There are plenty of cis women who have not had the same experience as other cis women. Does that make them less of a woman? No. And that does not negate their part in society either. So I think it's, I was just going to say, I think it's a matter of your perception of the issue.
Danny, before I jump in, I just wanted to ask if you have any more clarification about what you're wondering or what you're asking about, because I don't want to dive into a rant or anything that isn't going to be helpful to you.
Right. I think the sort of the focus of my question is it seems to me like the trans political movement, and again I'm talking about on like Twitter, Reddit, etc.
Sure.
It seems like they are striving so hard for equality that there is a bit of drowning out of cisgendered women's perspective. To the like they're striving so hard for equality that they, anytime that anybody wants to say that there isn't a difference, that they push back so hard, saying no, we are exactly equal.
I hear you.
Okay, yeah, I think I see. There are so many wrongs in the world and in society that we are all trying to climb our way up, and sometimes we climb over each other just to get that one rung higher. I think that's
right.
Is that kind of where you're going with this? Okay.
Yeah, when you're among or when you're witnessing conversation within a marginalized community, you're going to see a lot of sort of in-group thinking, and that's not a bad thing per se. It's pretty normal.
Right.
It's just a normal thing that humans do. And when
it's unfortunate. I don't mean to jump in, but I think it's important to point out the way that gay men treated lesbians for so long.
Oh, yeah.
The way that lesbians and gays contributed to bisexual invisibility for so long. And as we work our way to the acronym, now we're at the T, and we're starting to talk about that experience. And so I feel like that is a unfortunate aspect of humanity as we just get slightly better at taking care of one another. Yeah.
It's just there are so many different things that can make you marginalized.
Sure.
That we're trying to work on all of them at one time, but unfortunately, that's not how races go.
Yeah, there's no oppression Olympics, but yeah, there's in-group thinking, and that's not only normal, that's actually kind of necessary, I find, because it's building a cultural identity for people who didn't have that, for people who initially, without that community, saw themselves as isolated and alone and freakish in many cases, because that's the way that society treated them. And a natural outgrowth of that, unfortunately, is that when you're in those communities and someone will sort of push against the sort of groupthink, there's going to be a backlash. And I'm not sure that I don't think in any way that that's endemic to the trans movement, in as much as there is one, so much as it is just endemic to movements in general. But I get what you're saying, and I've seen the same thing, and I've probably been guilty of it, honestly, because I've certainly, when you have to answer the same questions often enough, it begins to seem kind of like a script, and you're just ready for the next reply, you know?
So, Danny, did that kind of help at all with what you were looking to talk about?
I guess the final point that I would ask is, as someone who kind of sees all of the moving pieces and seeing, I think we're pushing a little bit too strongly here. How can I stay balanced as far as, yes, this does, there is injustice here, but at the same time, they have a point, but at the same time not alienating myself from the only community that I, feel a close bond with.
When I want to do that, what I do, and I don't know if this will work for you, but what I do is I phrase my objections as questions. Just always. If I have a differing view, instead of saying, "Hey, they have a point with this," I'll say, "Hey, what about this? What do you guys think?" And then create a discussion about it in a respectful way instead of pushing what I think in there. And it's not perfect by any means, and arguments still erupt, but it is, in my experience, much more successful with actually creating conversation and creating dialogue.
That makes sense.
What about you folks?
The street epistemology.
I should really look that up sometime.
Oh no, that's basically it. Is just asking questions instead of
The Socratic method,
arguing
is a way of bringing
so
things
much.
out.
Just
I just
asking
invented
questions.
that myself.
Okay.
Which gets the other party, rather than getting their defenses up, gets them thinking. So yeah, I would agree.
That's our 2 cents.
So
And I think
So as
just
far
as a
as-
general rule, remembering that people are people, and that anybody who says that they're oppressed is perhaps worth listening to. There's definitely folks that are just clamoring for the sake of that, or because they no longer are in control. They're complaining about how oppressed they are. But even still, I think that there's a lot of value in at least listening to those folks, rather than just blowing off the, White Lives Matter movements or these different things. Trying to hear where they're coming from, where that fear is located, and having some respect for it, even if their view system is really broken and selfishly motivated.
yeah. So Danny, did that help at all?
Yeah. I heard street epistemology and Socratic method. I guess, would those be the best things to, as far as do some research on the finer points of using those methods to engage conversation? Is that a good starting point as far as research is concerned?
I would say yes, because it is a good toolbox for any conversation about any topic. It's just how to have that constructive conversation without putting up barriers. So I would say yes.
Any form of intentional, therapeutic, nonviolent communication, no matter which terminology we're using to package it in.
Read that book.
We can call it motivational interviewing. We can call it, it really is going back to Socrates. He said, as somebody who barely understands complex philosophy.
I drank what?
But it is of value to look at those things and to just try to be more kind as we're having these conversations. Any group that is advocating exclusion is usually one that's going to set up a red flag for me. So if the E in your acronym includes excluding other people, particularly people that are thoroughly marginalized, then I think you really need to stop and ask yourselves what the hell you're doing. But as decent and kind humans, we want to try and hear people, no matter how ridiculous, and take what we can from that, try to see their hurts and their fears, and respond as kindly as we can without being pushed over by assholes.
I also try to be kind when people lash out, because it's generally not about me or what I'm talking about. Especially if we're talking about a marginalized group, if I say something and it gets someone's dander up, it's probably just because this person is living with a lot of shit, and it really sucks to be just to be marginalized. It sucks. So try not to take it personally. And I want to thank you, by the way,
Well,
for
thank
this
you very-
for this call.
Yeah,
Yes,
we really
thank
appreciate
you.
you calling in. And, again, we do have a couple of lines open. So as we move on to our next email, we would love to hear from more of you.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
And if you would like to call the show, that number is 512-686-0279. 512-686-0279.
When you say it so hypnotically, it just gets lodged in my memory.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's intentional. So, the next mailbag item that we have, I believe, is Sarah's.
Yes, I will take this one.
All righty. You go right ahead, girl.
All right, so we got another wonderful email. And it begins, "Hi there.
Hello.
My question relates to homophobic family and sexuality in general. Is there any secular reason to be opposed to homosexuality? I have a friend whose parents are Christian fundamentalists and very opposed to homosexuality, the practice, not the orientation, and sex before marriage, etc. She came out to them with the help of a therapist, and her mother told her that her sexual orientation, which was lesbian, was a result of her birth control pills. Despite the
Sounds like science.
Oh yeah, that's so sciencey. Despite the therapist and a doctor informing them that that was not the case, her parents wouldn't accept her and continue to pressure her to stay in the closet and shame her for who she is attracted to. The parents were given information for a PFLAG, that's Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, chapter, and her mom told her that she threw them out because it was disgusting that they were pushing the perverted gay liberal agenda. I'm wondering if there's any validity to the birth control sexual orientation hypothesis and how I can best support my friend, or if you know of good online resources for her. She's an atheist, but she still says she feels terrible about her sexual orientation and is really devastated that her parents still haven't come around after 4 years since she came out. Love the show. Thanks.
Well, of course she still feels like shit. She's being treated like shit.
Yeah. Holy crap. Yeah, so first of all, yes, your friend needs to get online and get on some groups. PFLAG is actually a really great resource. They're a pretty great group. It differs locally because they're sort of like a franchise in a way. But online, there's all sorts of groups you can get on for support. And yeah, just tell her, get online and do a Google. Use the Google.
Do a Google.
Yeah.
Meet people.
Yeah. The birth control thing, yeah, it's
That's
funny.
That one just
fascinating theory to me.
It's actually, yeah. If you look on Catholic blogs,
Of course, it's
any
the Catholics.
sort, you're gonna find this eventually. It's a pretty popular idea.
I had never heard that. I mean,
Neither
it
had
makes
I.
so much sense to me in the sense that if you hate two things, might as well
Somehow.
blame them on each other.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. So like some scientist one place gave some rats some like estradiol or something, and
They started
fucking each other or whatever.
the girl rats, not the boy rats.
Of course. And there's little bits and pieces that they pull from, or the way that people do when they want to reinforce their ideas with science. But I think despite that,
I
we
think,
don't actually know why people are gay yet.
I think we can all solidly say it's probably not that.
Not so much that.
No.
Probably not a medication that millions of people take that she likely didn't start taking until she
puberty.
was well after puberty.
Oh, no, to clarify, the idea is if your mother took birth control, it can affect you in the womb.
Okay.
Oh. Okay, I was
yeah.
totally not understanding.
I didn't understand it
that
at first until I
argument.
looked it up. Yeah. So that's the idea. And to be fair to them, and as much as it is possible to be fair to this ridiculous notion, there is some indication
Socratic method, kindness.
that one of the aspects that can affect the chances of having a different sexual orientation is the hormone balance while in the womb.
Mm-hmm.
So there is, that much science to this idea. This much, right? See? Right there. But
Really?
it's
I was
generally
pretty
not.
sure your fingers were touching.
Shh. That's my secret.
So, yes, as far as the birth control goes,
Not so much.
Let's start with the non-problem aspect of this.
Right.
You know, like trying to diagnose something it implies that it's something that you want to change or something that's problematic in some way, right? And I think it is always fun to know why things are things.
Right.
Why is the sky blue?
Sure.
Why, you know, so science and advancements and perhaps medications, it does seem that hormones in the womb do play some aspect in gender and orientation and these different constructs. But as interesting as that investigation might be, if we're starting from the presupposition that this is a problem, then we've got a problem.
Yes. It's not a problem. The problem is with her parents.
Yes.
I think I can speak for everyone at this table when I say there is nothing wrong with her. Just her parents and their... anyone else want to give some good descriptors that would not get me in trouble?
Narrow, I think, is the nicest way I can say it.
Sure.
Sheltered.
Yeah.
Very sheltered in their own views.
The best thing to do for anyone who is restricted in a not great environment is find your people. And by that, I mean find a local group, get online, meet people who are going to give you the love and the support that you deserve.
And I value that, and I think that that's probably a message that is likely getting through to them to an extent, but something they may not have thought about or that I found terribly transformative in my life was honestly listening to shows like this one. I mean, it's the reason I was motivated to be here, why I wanted to join with the ACA and do things like this, because even as I came to the place where your friend has, where she recognizes that there's nothing wrong, there's nothing immoral about what she is, about what she believes, about who she loves, it can still feel shameful. Those things can still feel really buried as part of who we are. And one way to get around that is just constant exposure. And so I went really out of my way to find shows and podcasts like this one. You know, listening to Dan Savage every week, you know, watching the L Word. I mean, these sort of silly things that don't necessarily seem transformative, but by being constantly exposed to queer media or just folks that are living differently, or in this case, living like you, can really help to normalize those things. So being in community, whether it's online or in person, there's value in that. But if chat rooms aren't for you, if you know, communicating with people in that way is not a huge part of your life or how you consume media or whatever else, finding yourself just surrounded by the normalization of homosexuality, of your identity, you know, just watching shows that support these ideals. And that's one of the reasons that visibility is so important. And that as we see an increase in queer shows, in shows of different races, you know, more and more we're seeing shows often clumsily, but attempting to tackle things like kink and polyamory.
Their heart is in the right place.
They so often try, and sometimes they really do succeed.
Sure.
You know, I recently kind of tackled Wanderlust on my Instagram feed, and people were kind of freaked out because it's not a perfect show, but I still thought it brought up some really beautiful things. And seeing that on screen in the same way that seeing a show about, you know, death or about love or any of these things that we make movies about can give us an opportunity to see ourselves in someone else. We find empathy and love for these characters, and it can help us find empathy and love for ourselves.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah. And the letter started with the question, you know, is there a secular reason to be opposed to homosexuality? There is no good reason to be opposed to homosexuality, whether you're
secular or otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah, and anyone, yeah. We've covered this before on the show, but
And we will continue to do so.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we actually have a youtube.com/secular sexuality video called "Is There a Secular Reason to Oppose Homosexuality?" And too long didn't read. Spoiler alert.
No.
All right. So, real quick before we take our next call, I just want to put it out there. We still have lines open. We would love to hear from you. 512-686-0279. All right. And we have Ming on the line. Hi, Ming. How are you?
Hey, Ming.
Hello, Christy. Hello, Serafina. Hello, Megan.
Howdy.
I'm okay. How are you guys?
Yeah, what's going on tonight?
Nice to talk to you again.
Yeah. So the first caller just bring up to me something that I wonder myself too, and which is I feel like before people from our community are rejected by people from the outside, it's like even in our own community we don't even accept each other yet. So I would love to give you some experience for myself, and I would love to hear your opinion how we can resolve this problem.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was about 19 years old, I took a class, a human sexuality class in college, and my teacher was a transsexual woman, so she transitioned completely.
Mm-hmm.
And so one day when she brought in a guest speaker who was also a transsexual, and so when we when we go through the Q&A and ask questions, so the way I see is so when I talk to the partner of the guest speaker, I ask him, so in your mind, do you see your fiance is a woman or is it a transsexual woman? And he said, well, I mean, she act and talk and she behave and she treats me like a man and she act like a woman. So I do see her a woman, not a transsexual woman. And then I asked him, what about my teacher? Do you see her as a woman as well? And then he told me, I think if you ask me, in my mind, I don't think she looks exactly like a woman. But if she want me to accept her as a woman, I would. And so it seemed like even in our, I mean, of course he's not gay, so he's not in our community, so I don't consider that. But I mean, even in our own community, I feel like we have a tendency to treat, transsexual women and transgender women differently. I mean, they don't seem to be in harmony with each other because transsexuals seem to see themselves, I'm a woman, I'm just born in the wrong, sex. So I don't want to be lumped into the same category with the other, transgender woman. So I guess do you see that often in your community where you live, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think even the way that we talk about these things is changing. I feel like the narrative, even as recently as 5 years ago, was that a trans person was somebody who was born in the wrong body, right? And now more and more we're recognizing that that's way too simplistic. And you can check out Serafina's episode in particular where she goes into sort of the specifics of the genetics and the other aspects of transgender identity, but simply to say that it's not a binary switch, that XY chromosome conversation that we're so constantly having, it's not a singular genetic mutation where somebody just got the wrong flip switch. It's so much more complex than that, and trans women are so much more complex than a accidental misfiring on one particular chromosome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot for this one. Sorry.
No, you're right. I mean, there's so much gatekeeping in the LGBTQ, et cetera, community. People who are gay and don't care for the trans folk, or people who are trans and experience dysphoria and don't care for the folks who are trans and don't experience dysphoria, people who are any sort of thing and don't want asexuals to be part of it, people who don't think non-binary people should be counted as queer folk. It is ridiculous, frankly. But it's everywhere. It's going on constantly. And I hear what you're saying, and I do agree that it's a problem. And I think that as far as solutions go, a lot of it is just trying to spread the right, quote unquote, the more inclusive, I guess, memes, that sort of dialogue as best we can, so that it becomes the more accepted way to look at things.
Basically spreading empathy.
Yeah. That might be my favorite Facebook trend of this week, at a time where we're debating, female presenting nipples and these stupid things on Facebook. The recent series of memes where it's just recycled old memes with all the gender pronouns scratched out and replaced with inclusive language.
I haven't seen that. That's cool.
Yeah, I feel like it's been popping up all over in my feed. But, find a girl that makes you feel blah, blah, blah. And it just crosses out the girl and says, person. Find a person.
Yeah.
That's something we can all get behind.
Yeah.
Yeah, no easy answers. It's going
Yeah.
to take time, but keep on trying to spread inclusivity.
I guess the problem. Yeah, I think the problem I see is that many people tend to use the term normal as like with the capital N. So I remember when I was about 25 years old, I went to see my doctor, and so my doctor was sick on that day, so there was a substitute physician, and this woman was from Tennessee. So she asked me, just regular question like, are you sexually active? Do you have, how many sexual partners do you have? And I answered no to all of those questions. And she said, really? So, and the conversation turned personal. So I asked her, why are you surprised? Is something wrong with that? She said, no. It's just that from my experience, it's really rare to see gay people who are normal like you. And I asked her to explain what it means. She said, most gay patients I met, if they're not flamboyant, they're going to wear really strange color I don't recognize. You dress pretty normally. And you don't have, you're not promiscuous. You want to have, a partner. And so if you go to live in my town, people will welcome you. And then I asked her, you serious? You live in a Bible Belt. You expect me to live there? She said, well, people they accept people if you have some standard of normalcy that you commit to, and it seems like you are in that category, so you will be accepted.
One of the good ones.
And and on the internet, I went to a blog about this gay family who have children, and the fathers explained to the audience that they have experience in the South because they just want to show people that they are normal, just like any family. They have children, they want to work, they don't commit any crime, etc. So I guess that's why the image of those things tend to.
Turns out gay people are people.
Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, as visibility increases, as we've been talking about, that those sorts of stereotypes start to evaporate. And, again, there's nothing wrong with being a little slutty, with getting around, with not wanting a long-time singular partner, with, having multiple partners, all of these different things, with being flamboyant and these different stereotypical identifiers. But being gay doesn't mean that those things are true about you.
Yeah, we've got
Yeah.
two things going here. We've got the stereotype thing, and we've also got just the conflation of the two definitions of normal as common and as, correct.
Right.
Right.
And that's a really unfortunate conflation in our culture.
And
So,
it's
yeah,
not going to change
uh,
without effort.
Yeah.
So, Serafina, when you address to the people, whom you educate about LGBTQ issue, how do you address the issue of, being normal? Because in their mind, I guess being transsexual, being transgender, or being gay is not a problem. But the thing is, they expect you to have some sort of conformity, to fit in, not to make yourself separate from the rest of society. So how would you address that to those people?
Gosh. Poorly. I mean,
With pizzazz.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because there are legitimate drawbacks to conforming to standards, and there are legitimate drawbacks to not conforming to standards. So I couldn't really advise one way or the other as such. I tend to dress fairly normally as far as that goes, and that is not because I think it's right, and it's not because it's my personal style. It is because if I dress in a way that society does not blink an eye at most of the time, then I am not paid attention to. And so I do not get as much negative attention when I'm walking around on the street or when I'm at the McDonald's or whatever. And at the same time, if you are in a subgroup and you are not you're not conforming to the stereotypes for that subgroup, there's negative drawbacks to that too, because people, will be like, holding you up as, oh, this is one of the good ones. Why can't all those other gays be like you?
Token minority ship.
Right. And it's just, it's awful. It's a terrible place to be. And I'm very sorry that you've been placed in that position before. Yeah, I don't know what I would tell people, because it's kind of a double-edged sword that you don't get to win at.
Yeah, it's exactly because, where I'm living, close to San Francisco Bay Area, and people there, they're very much liberal with the way they live, with their sexuality. And the thing is, I don't feel I fit in that community, because people, when I tell them I'm gay, they expect me to go to club every night, or I do drugs, or I need to have, to sleep with many people, and I don't do any of those things. It's not like I find them disgusting. That those things, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't do those things. It's not in me. The sad thing, like some people from, even from the South, they accept me, more than the gay community where I'm living, because they think that I'm trying to conform to their standard, but I don't. That's just the way I live my life.
Sure.
Right. And I think to wrap it up, I think the idea of normalcy, something being normal, honestly, that goes across gender lines, across
racial lines.
Lines. It goes across every facet of society. Something can be deemed normal or not normal.
I work so hard to use the word typical when I'm expressing something that is statistically common.
Right.
So as not to put that value statement on it, because we so often do.
Right. But I think the best thing we can say is there is nothing wrong at all with being what one would consider out of the norm. Just remind yourself of that occasionally, that you're good the way you are.
Yeah, you get to be you.
And we like you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we do really appreciate you giving us a call.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for a good show.
Yeah, you have a good night.
All right. Well, that was a good call. I know that we have another viewer mailbag to go over. But we do have a couple calls, and I was kind of hoping to get to another one of those before we get into my mailbag.
For sure, yeah. I'd love to speak to Julie in particular, if y'all are ready to jump in.
Absolutely.
Sounds good
All
to
right.
me. Julie, you are on the air.
Oh my God! Hi, Serafina and Megan and Christy. You guys are amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's going on tonight?
Just for being you. Well, what's going on is that okay, so yeah, I live in Memphis, Tennessee, and
I'm sorry.
my husband and I, yeah, me too. But no, I mean, look, there are good people here. We're just hard to find. Anyway, my husband and I, so I was raised Roman Catholic. My husband's a PK. He was raised Methodist, but we're both atheists. And here's the thing: we were both cheated on a lot by my first husband, because I was raised Roman Catholic, so I married like my first boyfriend way the fuck too young, and like you do. And sorry, I'm really nervous. Wow. Anyway, so the point is that my husband's best friend. I'm bisexual. My husband is mostly straight, and but his best friend is this really a lovely, beautiful woman who's amazing, and she was best man at our wedding, and her husband was one of the ushers, and we're really close to them, and her husband knows about all of this. Like, there's no deception or any weirdness on that level. But so we when he and I first got together, we both agreed that since we'd both been cheated on before, we didn't want to hurt each other that way, and we didn't ever want to be hurt that way again. So, we were like, nope, we're monogamous. This is how it's going to be. I tried to be more of a free spirit when I was younger, and it didn't go well, and, all that. And so we were in a very good for us, I'm not saying it's for everybody, but very good, like, monogamous relationship for the first 4 years of our marriage. And then recently it turns out that his best friend, and like I said, her husband knows all about it, and he's totally cool with it. It's kind of a turn on for him. Yeah, it really is. Yeah. It turns out that I've known her a long time too, because we all worked in the same place. That's how we all met. But she's had a crush on me for like 10 years, which I didn't know until recently. And she's a really freaking hot redhead. And so things happened, and then I kind of freaked out. And I was, and part of why I freaked out was because, like, and without getting into lurid detail, things had happened, and I was fine with that. But then, like,
yada.
Morning, I was tired, yada yada. I went to bed,
Can you
and
yada
apparently not too much stuff happened. Like, nothing that hadn't happened before happened, but other stuff happened between just the two of them while I was asleep. And when I woke up later and found out, I was really angry, and then they were both very contrite, and then I felt guilty for feeling angry, and it was just this big, it was this big bad thing, and I think we're mostly okay with it. But how do you transition from a relationship that was initially, like, part of the turn on, honestly, of it was that, no, we're like so monogamous, and we realize this isn't for everybody, but I'm so into you and you're so into me. And now we're letting someone else into our sex life, and I'm kind of wigging out about it. So that's why I called, and I hope that was short.
Well, you said how, and I think the only short answer is very carefully. And
very carefully.
Patiently and kindly. You used the word, I think you said, I felt very angry, and they were very contrite, and then I felt very bad for feeling angry. And I'm imagining that you're fast forwarding through some actions that were tied to those feelings, but I want to kind of divorce those a little bit, because feeling angry is not anything I would ask anybody to apologize for. I think that having those feelings is very human. Now, throwing the toaster and screaming at somebody, that's not right.
What we do with those emotions.
Well, we know what you do.
what you do with those feelings, that you're responsible for. That you may or may not have some apologies to make there, but feeling angry, I think, is part and parcel of the opening up experience. And it's a little bit uncomfortable for anybody under the best of circumstances. I referenced the TV show Wanderlust earlier, and the visceral reaction that I had watching that. Oh, I thought it was really beautiful too. It brought out a lot of amazing things, but it was in a lot of ways a bit triggering for me watching it, just because it brought me back to that time, and that is just a tricky
it made me cry
moment.
buckets.
Yeah, so much, because if you've been through that experience, it's difficult by any means. So, I guess I'm kind of just empathizing with you, but, something that you can take away is that your feelings are fine. What you do with them is important. And what I would most encourage you to do is just read so many books. Get all that good information up in your head. There are a bunch of great ones in particular.
I was an English professor for 13 years, so I'm not laughing at the notion of reading books. That's just the best advice you could possibly give. That's why it made me chortle. That's what that was. Sorry. Please continue. I apologize.
I mean, that's the place I would definitely start. And I'd love to hear from y'all, but I mean, opening up More Than Two by Franklin Vo, The Polyamorous Next Door by Eli Sheff. I mean, I think all of those are great places to start.
And we'll put all those in the comments.
Okay. All right, I'm taking notes. Okay, thank you so much. And just a quick aside, Christy, Megan, you freaking rock, and Serafina, you're like my hero. So just so you know, like, you guys are so amazing, and I love you vicariously, obviously, because I haven't actually met you, and that's a little weird. But there you go, you're amazing, and we love your show. We watch it all the time. So
I misheard you at first and thought you said you loved us bi-curiously, and I'm good with that too.
Well, I'm bi, and I've been out about that since I was 17, so I'm cool with that. I'm 40. It's a thing. But no, I didn't say that. But yay, you're amazing people, and you're awesome. So thank you.
Well,
thank you so much for joining us. And I just kind of want to make sure to give y'all a moment. If there's anything in particular that stands out for you, is the best way to navigate this kind of thing.
I mean, for me, it's communication. Communication is key.
You'll hear that over and over and over with every poly folk that you meet or talk to.
Yeah, just and make sure that before any further actions are taken, you have an agreement set up with your spouse and with the other people involved, so that you know where those lines are, so that you know where to stop before
what might hurt them or what's
before
important
hurting
to
your
them.
partner.
Sure.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think that's important too.
Did you have any?
Yes. Welcome, everyone, to Auntie Sarah's Poly Corner. So
Polly Pocket?
Ooh, Poly Pocket.
Oh,
Sorry.
Nice.
much better.
Nice. Very
Much
nice.
better.
I'm going to use that. So a few things that might help you to remember, and I hope they do. One is every relationship changes and evolves. No matter how that relationship is, no matter what kind of relationship it is, it's going to evolve and change. And so there's a tendency, especially when you are making a specific change, like opening up a marriage or whatever, to have pushback. And that pushback will often mentally come in the form of wanting it to pull back to the way it was. And that's understandable and very human. And at the same time, it's also kind of inherently wrong. I mean, not like...
Well, it's not realistic.
Right, in that sense. Not in like a moralistic sense.
Hopefully long.
Right.
Right?
Because it's not the same relationship anymore, and it's not going to be the same relationship ever again because relationships just naturally change. The other thing that I would say is just kindness. Be kind to yourself. Accept that when you have feelings like anger, jealousy, fear, these things are absolutely tools that you can use. They're your brain trying to tell you something. A lot of times that is about a fear or insecurity of yours. A lot of times, sometimes that's even about something that's actually going on that you should address. So feeling contrite is one thing, but it's not necessarily, you don't have to feel bad for feeling bad.
Girl, you are so smart. Jesus. You are so wise. Seriously. That was exactly what, oh my God. Yeah. Oh my God, this life. That's exactly what, you're awesome. Wow.
Okay. I'm
Sorry,
glad that was good.
babbling now.
Thank you.
I'll
I'm
stop.
blushing now, by the way.
It
so,
really was.
And email us if you have questions for us at a later time. Or
Yeah, absolutely. And like she said, we'll definitely get a list of some books and some resources that, we really endorse and enjoy up there. But, just jump on Amazon and go through. There are so many great poly books out there, and there are more and more being written all the time, which is sort of a fascinating thing for me after... there were 20 years there where it was kind of just the ethical slut, which is a bit of a slog. It's very popular, and I don't want to knock it. I mean, Dosey Eden and Janet Hardy did great work that a lot of people needed, but there are
There's more sense.
fun books out there for sure.
There's plenty of good stuff. Yeah.
Well,
Gosh. Okay. Well, thank you all so much. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Well, glad to hear it, and enjoy that redheaded love.
I mean, yeah.
oh, you get it, girl.
I do have a thing for redheads. It's bad. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, you all have a great night, and thank you so much for your advice, and especially. Sorry, Megan and Christy, but especially Serafina, what you just said was amazing.
It's why we have her.
Agree. We agree.
You're fantastic. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for calling.
Well, I've talked enough, so I've done my work here.
Stage me on my...
So the last mail item,
Number 3.
of the evening is... I'll just start here from the top. I wanted to talk about kinks. Specifically, I wanted to talk about meeting someone in the kink community who was pretty aggressive about her and her husband's being devoted Christians.
Okay.
Alrighty. Cool. Gonna start with alrighty.
Was that their kink?
No. Apparently they were just in the kink community, but it was important to them.
Okay. All right. Cool.
I wouldn't want to kink shame anything consensual, and if I couldn't understand the appeal of that specific kink, I probably wouldn't even have met the person.
Okay.
This was this was a couple into DDIG.
Daddy Dumb Little Girl.
DDLG, yeah.
Oh, LG, sorry. I cannot see. And she actually quoted Bible verses to me to justify why her kink apparently brought them closer to God.
I've never heard that one. All right.
And in parentheses, without me asking her anything about religion.
So this was like their elevator's pitch, apparently.
Yeah. It made me really uncomfortable, and I didn't know how to react. Right there with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've heard...
Definitely sympathizing there. Yeah.
Yeah. They say, I've heard Christy describe the whole CGL dynamic very beautifully, so I'm sure that you understand that it has nothing to do with pedophiles or child molestation, but it already is an association that many caregivers and littles struggle with before accepting their preferences.
Yeah, and I guess we should take this moment to say DDLG, CGL, these acronyms. You said daddy, daughter, little girl, caregiver, little. These are kinks, which I feel like that word is almost misapplied, but that's the semantics of that is something that actually that we did spend an entire episode on.
Discuss,
so, but to move forward a little bit, this is effectively a form of role play, and it doesn't have anything to do with pedophilia or these different things. And I can imagine how from the outside it looks like that, but if you have any sort of empathy in your heart and understand how consent works, which is that anybody who's not hurting anybody else and who's consenting can enjoy this type of play.
Right. They go on to say, I'm glad people can embrace their sexual preferences despite their religious upbringing, though I would prefer if they looked at their religion rationally instead of trying to fit their preferences into those teachings. And it's probably difficult to know what most of their congregation would look down on them. It's probably difficult to know that most of their congregation would look down on them because of the kinky stuff in their relationship and not feeling at home in the kink community because most people aren't very religious. But I got completely overwhelmed by that need to simultaneously justify and preach in a place where I didn't expect any of that.
Yeah, hearing that.
And finally, I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts on how I could handle a similar situation in the future, or just in general, how you'd feel about it. Well,
I gotta say, of all the places I've been preached to without wanting to be,
yeah, that's not really the situation.
a munch is about the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing that gets me is they said this couple felt that it brought them closer to God, which...
You know, I could make that argument in a weird way. I mean,
it takes some serious mental gymnastics.
it does. It really
like
does.
some backflips and some twirly-doos and, yeah.
I mean, it's the kind of book that you can make justify anything if you work hard at it.
Right.
Yeah, well, and you've got 2,000 years worth of like fan fiction and,
Sure.
and apologetics to like help you achieve that goal. I guess my initial reaction is, I guess it's not really clear whether she became involved with this couple or pursued the relationship at all. I'm not
It
categorically...
sounds more like a casual, introduction.
So if that's the case, then I guess... You know what? At least you got a good story out of it. It's a little bit like going on a terrible date. And, at least you can walk away sort of laughing at yourself. And if that's all that happened, then okay, cool. We got a good story out of it. If you did get involved in a relationship like this, which I wouldn't categorically say not to, but I know I would be incredibly hesitant to. I mean, she says in a couple of different places how uncomfortable she felt. And anytime you're initiating any relationship, but particularly one that's kink-based,
Comfort is...
You got to listen to those red flags. Those are the canaries in the coal mine that will keep you from getting, I'm not exaggerating to say keep you from getting killed.
Yeah.
Those are things to take very seriously. And so I sincerely hope that everybody's been safe, that people are being vetted, that people are being kind. But geez, I just can't imagine somebody quoting scripture from memory to me at a munch.
I can see where it is its own kink,
Yeah,
but not that you have this, DDLG or CGL kink, and you are also religious, and you're really, really, really trying to smush the two together in a way that just doesn't work.
We've seen it before. I think we've all met gay Christians at some point, or
This is true.
Folks that are desperately doing those mental gymnastics to try and make it work. And it just sounds like such a miserable place to sit. I think that's why organizations like Freedom from Religion that help found this show,
Recovering from Religion.
and Recovering from Religion, and the Atheist Community of Austin. All of these things exist so that people don't have to go through that type of mental torture. But yikes, that's a wild one.
It definitely is. I'm going to be thinking about this one for a while, just because I can't even imagine how you fit one into the other. Like I said, I can totally see where the kink comes in, of
need
like
a
a
lot of
religious
lube.
kink, religious angled kink, but not like I actually think this is bringing me closer to my
sincerely
deity.
held belief.
Yeah.
It scares me. I'm not exaggerating. It scares me to hear about that sort of relationship, because there are power dynamics in that relationship. And if you're combining that with a religion and saying that it brings you closer to God, you're basically aligning that with your religion. You're sort of adding the deity authority to it, to something with an inherent power dynamic. And we've seen, with history, how bad that is.
See also all of history.
Yes.
Yeah.
So putting that into a relationship just scares the crap out of me, and I would be, turning around and walking the other way in the party, personally.
Yeah, I mean, so there is the inherent power dynamic of caregiver-little relationships. Then you're adding in what sounds like a couple with a single female, so you're probably talking about couple privilege and everything that goes along with that. And then you're tossing in that very dangerous Jesus stew. That's that does sound very scary. And that's one of the reasons that munches and things like that exist, so that you have an opportunity
To screen those people.
Yeah, to vet people, to form a community. I have to imagine that if they are just approaching random people with this belief system, that they're going to get drummed out pretty quickly. I mean, maybe they are wonderfully decent and kind human beings despite their religious beliefs, but it's hard based on what we're seeing here to feel safe.
Yeah.
I can only imagine being in that in her situation, and just the feeling of sheer discomfort. It would be ridiculous. I did want to take a moment to thank everyone in the chat, especially those who are donating in the chat. Those super chats, we actually get 100% of those because we are a nonprofit.
Excellent. That's
So thank you guys so much. Every dollar counts. Every dollar goes to helping keep the lights on, keeping the community going, keeping the fun happening. We have a holiday party coming up for people who don't have anywhere else to go or just want to not hang out with their families.
or just be part of community, which is the beauty of the Atheist Community of Austin. And when they were hauling in the food earlier, so much. Somebody went to a butcher shop, and we're talking about pounds and pounds. Yeah. Ooh. It was more than the one, right? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's incredible. We had a couple of bonus questions if y'all are interested in kicking a few of those around before we wrap up tonight.
Sure, I suppose. What do you think?
Let's do it.
All right.
So we talked last week about everything that's going on Tumblr and on Facebook and these different platforms as they change their community standards. So one question that came up, why is it okay to see men's nipples but not women's? Why is it okay? I'm asking you, YouTube, not our viewers. Like, actually, if I could talk to, if Google is listening, we would like to know.
It goes back to that whole, girls have boobies and they can't be shown. Although it is weird because there is a certain amount of skin that you can show on TV. And usually that ends at the nipple.
Right.
But guys can go shirtless and run on the beach a la James Bond, Daniel Craig.
Which we're also in support of.
Oh, for sure. Just, let the girls be free.
Yeah, I have to say that this is probably one of the things that took me the longest to come around on. The Free the Nipple movement was really confusing for me for the longest time. And the simple, short answer to that is because I really like looking at breasts. And there is, for me, something inherently sexual about the sight of a naked breast. Sure. And that is so culturally ingrained in us that it's hard to remember that there's nothing inherently biological about that aspect of our sexuality or of our bodies. yes, we are naturally drawn to sexual feelings and things that we find attractive, but for so long, ankles were on that list. You know, so this idea that a woman's breast is particularly a sexual object really feels like just a way of objectifying and sexualizing women. Am I right in that?
No, not at all. And I also think that I personally also get a certain sexual sense from men shirtless running on the beach.
Sure.
But I can still see it.
Yeah, and you can still be a person about it, and
Right.
there's no, well, what was he wearing?
Well, nothing, obviously.
As little as possible.
Yeah. What do you think on the whole nipple situation?
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's sort of a throwback, well, holdover rather, to just the purity culture that we've had for so very long. With, you know, once a girl starts to hit puberty, she becomes a woman, and we must, you know,
Guard that.
yes, guard it and hide it away so that it can only be seen by her husband when she is in bloom.
Lock her up.
Yeah, until she's ready for her new owner, and it's gross and it's awful, but it's still there in our culture, and we've got a lot of holdovers like that, I think.
I am constantly reminded, just as a general symbol, of the chastity belt from Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Call the locksmith.
Anytime we talk about stuff related to, you know, gender roles and women and the, you know, needing to protect the chastity and the purity, it just keeps going back in my mind to that, you know, that idea of the chastity belt, just because it was such a good like example.
Yeah.
Intentionally so, but
Yeah, I mean, we've still got purity culture super strong in our culture, and our religious institutions are doing their best to help it along as much as they can. So that's fun.
so what you said you had a couple questions. Did you have another?
Well, yeah, you know, I don't know that we could possibly tackle this in the next 4 minutes. But lightning
Should we
round.
try?
Yeah, give
Okay.
me your quick thoughts. Why is lesbian sex just a thing with men?
Because lesbians are hot. Next.
I was going
Yeah,
to say
okay.
it's not just a thing with men. I mean,
Co-signed. Yeah, I mean, but it is a reasonable question. Straight men are not super interested, generally speaking, of watching gay men have sex. Straight women are somewhat more interested in watching gay men have sex, but not especially. Lesbian women also, generally, that's the case. And in fact, when we do sex research, this phenomena of straight men being almost obsessive about lesbian sex really gets in the way of our data collection.
I think it just occurred to me because they can imagine themselves being there and it becoming a threesome.
I mean, I think that's
Probably.
definitely a part of it. I think that there's that on top of a bunch of things, but I do think there's this sense of wouldn't it be great to, I mean, if having sex with one woman is great, having sex with two women must be greaterest.
Sorry,
That's-
he just stopped.
I don't
He
know.
just totally stopped us.
That's a component. I don't think that that's all that there is to
No,
it,
it's not
though.
the only thing. I would not imagine it's the only thing, but it definitely could be a contributing factor.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the same sense that many times men in a committed relationship will not want their significant other to cheat on them with a guy. But if you meet a hot chick that you're kind of into and you want to bring them around, it's okay. I think it's kind of hot. All right, well, that's kind of being hypocritical, but think about it for a sec.
Yeah, it's called the one penis policy. It's pretty gross.
Yeah, and I think that there are a lot of components to breaking that down. I mean, this idea that lesbian sex doesn't count as if it's not real sex,
Right.
I think that's a very common narrative. And there's something less threatening about it. I mean, there are just all of these different components to unpack there. I'll say this. Better people have tried to answer this question, and I myself have attempted far beyond the scope of what we have time for tonight, but I think the reason the answers are so elusive is because they are so multifaceted. I really think that there are so many different contributing factors in this, and a big part of it is the objectification of women.
Right.
It is the idea that when two women have sex, that it's for the sake of a man. You know, that's
Right.
a notion that I think is terribly common. There is, like you said, this idea that you could perhaps insert yourself into that circumstance, and that, you know, if 2 boobs is good, 4 must be great.
Better, yeah.
And yeah, there are just so many aspects to all of this.
And I think that is a good place to leave off tonight. I did want to say...
Now that everybody is picturing lesbian sex in their minds,
Yeah.
it's a good time to wrap it up.
Yeah.
It's a betterer time.
Yeah.
So with that, I would just say this podcast, or we are available as a podcast if you did not know. You can catch it anywhere you get your normal podcasts. And next week, Christy, did you want to let our audience know what we're doing next week?
Yeah, we're going to be joined by Julie Burke, a therapist here in Austin, as we're going to be speaking about specifically love and sex and sexuality in the autism spectrum community, what it looks like for folks who are dating on the spectrum, what it might mean to date somebody on the spectrum, and what it might mean to raise a kid on the spectrum as they approach issues of sexuality, of gender identity, of just simply talking openly and tactfully about body parts and just these other aspects of life.
For someone who is non-neurotypical.
Exactly.
All right. I think that, that's right. We had a scheduling conflict. We were going to have her on.
A couple of weeks ago, and so we're glad to have her back on the roster, and looking forward to hearing from her. Looking forward to being joined again by all of you good folks. We hope you're having a wonderful holiday season.
Oh, yes.
As we prep for the new year, and thanks as always to Serafina for joining us, as well as everybody in the chat. Serafina, the upstaging hero of the hour.
Always.
Always.
Well, with that, I think we can call it a night. And would you like to take us out?
Yeah, you know, whether it is
With 4
bringing
boobs?
you closer to God, whether it's with 2 boobs, 4 boobs, no boobs, female presenting nipples or male presenting nipples, we just want to encourage everybody out there to go home, give yourself a big ol' orgasm, or better yet, give someone else one.